If you watch Legislative Week in Review, you have seen this gentleman joining us now on North Carolina Now, ace reporter, Mark Binker. I read an article you wrote January 2nd. It said among the biggest questions will be whether Governor Perdue and legislative Republicans will hold hands or hold grudges. Have you answered that question yet or found the answer to that question?
I don't think we're going to find the answer to that question until a few months in. Sort of the dance is going to happen. You're going to see Governor Perdue put out her budget proposal probably in February. And maybe that will, how legislative Republicans react to that will be one of the first signs we'll see if they say, hey, you know, some good ideas in here, we really want to work on some of this stuff, or if they come back and say, no, we're going a different direction and kind of sideline the governor a bit. So I think that'll be kind of the first indication.
Any sentiment of how they would lean? Are they going into this combatively, is that the term, or from a debate standpoint, or they want to really see what Governor Perdue offers?
They have been thus far, President or the potential President pro tem Phil Berger out of Eden and the future Speaker Mr. Tillis out of Cornelius have both said very complimentary things about proposals Governor Perdue has had to shrink government and kind of roll back some cost savings in government. So I think thus far the tone has been, we want to cooperate, we need to cooperate, we need all hands on deck. So there hasn't been a real contentious tone. Okay,
there's two ways to look at the spending. We have the current budget we are working under as the state government. We have a budget that is to be drawn by the legislature for July 1st, 2011. Let's look at the current spending plan. What kind of shape is state government in?
Actually, if you look at the current year, if our fiscal situation ended June 30th of 2011, we'd be in okay shape. A fiscal emergency does not exist. The revenues are coming in basically where budget writers projected they would be last year. The problem comes in the next year budget. There's a $3.7 billion gap between what we think we're going to take in next year in terms of taxes and fees and other kinds of revenue, and what, if you continued basically the current level of spending, you would need to spend to maintain that. So that $3.7 billion gap is what lawmakers and the governor have to bridge over the next 6 months.
Very elementary question. If they end the year this year, June 30th, with a budget that is in balance based on the revenue, then how can it automatically be almost a $4 billion deficit for 2011-12?
A couple things are happening. One, federal stimulus dollars that help the state out are going away. There's no more help from the federal government. So items in state government that used to be funded by those federal dollars are now essentially coming back onto the books. They now have to be paid for with state money. There's also some temporary taxes that are going away. A temporary sales tax increase that was put in place 2 years ago goes away effective July 1, as well as some other bits of the tax code over the rest of the year. So those are really the two big chunks. Plus you have just a growing needs of education, the public education, and what the recession has done is it's sent a lot of people looking for unemployment benefits and things like that, so the stress on government.
You brought up a point with the sales tax that would be expiring on July 1, 2011. Republicans have proposed publicly that they can close a $3.7 billion deficit in next year's budget. No taxes at all. Was that the opening line of negotiation, or is that the line in the sand being drawn firm day one?
Well, the Republicans on both sides, both the House and the Senate, have a little bit of a problem. They boxed themselves into a little bit of a corner because they ran on a new taxes pledge, a rather absolutist, we are not going to raise your taxes. And a lot of the new members of the General Assembly who put them in a majority are adherents to that. So it's going to be really tough for them to go back on that. Even if that is a opening round of negotiations, they might not have that as a negotiation tactic available to them. People have talked about, well, would keeping the temporary sales tax on count as a tax increase?
I was going to ask you about that. Is that a tax increase if you maintain a tax and not raise it?
That's a rhetorical fight. I mean, you would have, I think, a lot of Democrats and maybe even a few Republicans who will say, look, that's just maintaining the current tax rate. You would have a lot of, Republicans who are sort of fiscal conservative fundamentalists who say, look, this tax was due to expire and keeping it on is in fact a tax increase. The other thing that hasn't really gotten a whole lot of play right now is sort of what's sometimes referred to as tax spending or tax loopholes, items in the budget that, or items in the tax code that give breaks, for example, to, I think, farmers on motor fuel or to businesses who lease space. There's a good $5 to $6 billion in those kinds of loopholes and benefits to specific groups, and the question arises, well, is closing those loopholes a tax increase? And again, you get this sort of rhetorical fight.
Is that a wait to be seen as we see the floor debate, to see the committee debates, which philosophy wins?
Yeah, and I think it's also, a lot depends on the how. What do you have to do to cut your way to $3.7 billion? Do you put together a budget that really and truly is cuts and get to the end of that process and go, oh my gosh, we don't like the way this looks, this is untenable for some reason, we have to do something else, which is what happened either last year or the year before, where the legislature got to a certain point without a tax increase, and the governor and a few others said, no, this is unacceptable, you got to go back, you got to give me a little bit more revenue to work with.
What leverage do Democrats have in 2011? Does that remain to be seen?
They are now the loyal opposition. It is now their job to articulate why, if they see the Republicans doing something that they don't like, it's their job to articulate why that's bad and what the alternative is. In a sense, they sort of swapped roles with the Republican colleagues who have had to do the same thing over the past year.
And will spending dominate all other issues as we come out of the gate for the 2011 session?
Yes, probably. I think if you see some other issue, particularly if it's a social issue or something that's not as pressing as spending, people are going to ask, why are we spending time with this when we have this huge $3.7 billion problem? We have other financial things that we need to take care of. Why are we spending time on anything else? It's basically, if you're wanting something else to come to the fore, you're really going to have to make the case for that. So you'll have the spending, the budget, the taxes to deal with, and then close on the heels of that will be redistricting. If they can do both of those things in the course of a normal session length, that will actually be quite an accomplishment.
Mark, I must say, we work for UNC-TV. This show is under the umbrella of the university system. About 45% of our network's budget comes from the General Assembly. I want to be fair and open to the viewers out there. Mark, thanks for being on North Carolina Now tonight.